Hi, I'm Sarah Jesse, and I help coalitions to implement and evaluate their community health improvement initiatives. As Project Manager of Community Health Improvement in Action, I'm so excited to introduce you today to our latest tool, the CHIA Sample Dashboard. In this video, we'll explore the YRBS tab of the dashboard. I'll show you how this spreadsheet works and how to input your local data from the Youth Risk Behavior Survey. There are step-by-step instructions for entering your YRBS data, and you can follow along if you'd like there. But for now, let's focus on the YRBS table, which is in itself a dashboard reporting on progress toward objectives and with comparisons to state and U.S. average samples where available. As you see, this table presents data on 7 YRBS alcohol-related indicators. We have youth current drinkers, also called past 30-day use, youth who ever drank alcohol, youth who drank before age 13, youth binge drinkers, youth who believe that their parents disapprove of their drinking, youth who get alcohol from social sources. And here I want to note that we calculated this answer out of all students completing the question, not just the students who drink alcohol. And finally, youth who get alcohol from retail sources, which was calculated in a similar way. All of these YRBS questions are asked on the Wisconsin State Sample YRBS, administered by the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction in cooperation with the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. Your local schools can choose to ask the same questions on the online YRBS so that you can compare local results to a statewide sample benchmark. For each indicator, this table presents an objective, which you can put in yourself in column C here. For example, you might want to decrease the number of youth who currently drink to 30% by the end of 2018. This next column, E, generates a check mark if your objective has been met by the last data point, in this example, 2015. So if your objective is to decrease this rate to 30 and you're only at 31, no check mark. Let's say, however, that the objective that you chose a while back was a little more attainable. Perhaps it was 31. You see that this column E automatically generates a check mark because you met your objective with the last point of data here in column O. This uses conditional formatting in column E, which I'll tell you about later. Here are the years of data that you can input your local information in. And you see a spark line is automatically generated to show you the trend of that local data. Where available, we have state averages. That's the source of the information there. And US averages. Both are taken from a sample, and both of these columns, R and S, use conditional formatting to generate a red dot if local data is worse for that indicator. So you see here that youth who drank before age 13, our local data is worse than the state average. Our local data is also worse for youth binge drinkers. We don't have the state and national average for every indicator. So that's a quick overview of this table. Now let's talk about how to enter your data. The first step, of course, is to access that data, which may be easier said than done. You can see the section on this tab for advocating for the YRBS, which explains how you might talk to your middle and high schools about implementing the YRBS and choosing the indicators that would best meet your needs. There's more information below on the online YRBS for local data, and then about the CDC YRBS for state and national data. So with your data in hand, work with your coalition to choose an objective for each indicator that you would like to track. You can change this objective in column C. I would advise that you cannot change the word decrease to increase without changing the conditional formatting. So if you want to keep it simple, please keep those words, decrease, and just change the number and the date. I will explain in the next tutorial about conditional formatting, so if you would like to change that to increase, I can teach you how to do that appropriately. Next, you're going to unhide columns. So if you look up here, you notice that there are several columns that are hidden. To unhide them, we're going to highlight all of these columns here, H through R. You're going to right-click and select Unhide. This allows for the entering of many more years of data, should your coalition need it. You'll see this does change those spark lines, but don't worry about it. Later you can hide any unused columns and the spark lines will adjust accordingly. So we have talked about the special columns that use conditional formatting on this table. They are, again, columns E, columns R, and columns S. These columns draw from other special columns, columns O and Q. So please do take special care to follow the instructions so you don't change the formatting of cells in these columns. Now, if you're adding more recent data to this table, you must keep your most recent data in column O, because the checkmark rule in column E depends on the value in column O. So let's say it's a new year, it's 2017, and you have data to put in this column. What you will want to do is manually transfer the 2015 data to another column. You can't cut and paste because then the checkmark rule in column E will depend on the value in the column you paste to instead of column O, and that's not what we want. So an example here, I would simply type in this data for 2015. And then I would enter my current data for 2017 here. Let's say we're doing very well there, and let's say we're doing great on everything, shall we? Why not? Here in this indicator, important to note that we're looking to increase this indicator. We want more students to say that their parents disapprove of drinking, so let's say that's increased to 80%. And again, we want to decrease in youth who get alcohol from social or retail sources. Okay, so you see we've had a wonderful year there. And you can also see that this checkmark rule is still applied to column O. And because I inputted such great data, we have met our objective in every single indicator. Go team! Now, if you're adding past data to this table, you can use any of these columns, F through N. Just go ahead and enter your data to your heart's content. These columns are not specially formatted, so you can cut and paste all you want. Your coalition may have more years of data or fewer. Feel free to just use the columns that you require to input the data that you have on YRBS indicators. Once you are finished, simply hide the data columns that you are not using. Again, you highlight them at the top, right-click, and select Hide. And you see here that your spark lines have returned to normal. Once you've entered your data for the years that you would like, you'll need to go to the Dashboard Tables tab because data on this table is linked to cells on the Dashboard Tables tab. Let's go there now. Here we have our youth current drinkers. There are hidden rows here as well. You'll see here, if I highlight 26, it jumps to 33. We highlight those and select Unhide, and you see now that you have more years of data and that this does change your chart on the side. Don't worry about this. Later you can hide any unused rows and the chart will adjust accordingly. So go ahead and unhide all of the rows on these YRBS tables. There we are. So you see that each of these cells is linked to cells on the YRBS tab. For example, this cell pulls the name of the data point, and this cell pulls that data for that year. On the YRBS tab, we just added one more year of data, and that is all the changes that we made. So we can next go ahead and rehide any of our unused rows. Click on those rows and unhide, and you'll see that your chart returns to normal. Do this for each of those charts. Hide that. So here, this is a perfect example of how you need to take a look at your charts and see if adding data points has changed elements of the chart that need fixing. In this case, our lines with the labels social and retail, those labels are on top of the data, and that's not what we want. So go ahead and click twice on this. What you want here is not your chart area, but your plot area. Can be a little hard to grab, and move it in slightly, and that should give you the space that you need to have these lines easier to read. You'll see too that the arrow has moved, but this text box has not moved nicely with it, so I'll move that over. And now this looks nice. Returning to the YRBS tab. If more recent statewide and national data is available, you can enter that in the current column for statewide data, column R, and for national data, column S. Just remember to change the year on the heading for each column. You will not be saving the old benchmark data for state and national on this table. It will be deleted, so if you want to track that information over time, please create an additional table. But to do so, it would be just as simple as changing the date and changing the data. Now, cells in R and S use conditional formatting to generate a red dot if local data for the same year is worse than the benchmark data. Now this data, local data to compare to state and national data, is hidden in this once hidden column Q, now revealed. We added this column because the benchmark year, here 2013, may not be the same as the most recent year of local data. For example, here we have 2015 data available, but we didn't have a state average for 2015 because that weighted average was not available. So it's not possible in this situation to link this red dot rule to a column whose position would remain constant. That's why we created column Q. So you see here that column Q is unhidden, and you're going to manually enter this new local data in column Q. For example, since we have 2017 data, let's say it was a great year for our Wisconsin DPI, and we now can compare our local data to state data from the same year and US data from the same year. Hooray! So go ahead and enter that data manually here. So I would put in my numbers that I had selected earlier for the 2017 data. Again, we don't want to cut and paste here because it might change the formatting rule for our other cells. So when we're finished, we're simply going to hide column Q again so that it doesn't confuse folks. And there we have our new table with updated data. Now, if your schools did not use the same questions as the Wisconsin YRBS sample, you can easily change the indicators on this table. Just click on that cell and change the indicator to whatever you would like. You'll also need to edit the comment. So go ahead and select a cell. That cell, right click. Oops, that didn't work. Select the cell, right click. We're going to select edit comment, and we can now change the text in this box. For the indicators that you select, if there is no statewide or national data available for that indicator, you can just write NA in those columns. And then on the Dashboard Tables tab, back here, you would need to clear contents of the statewide average cells. So moving back up here, where we have this nice statewide average, if you choose an indicator that does not have a state average available, you would need to select these and clear contents. I did that by right-clicking, and you see that disappears. Anytime you make a mistake, of course, Control-Z or undo will bring you back to grace. Returning one last time to this YRBS tab, this is where we'll end the tutorial for now. If you need to adjust spark lines, enter additional columns of data, or if you'd like to learn about those conditional formatting rules, join us for an advanced look at inputting your YRBS survey data. Thank you, and see you again soon.